Random question. You did see this before me. You saw this Thursday night, correct? Yes. How many people were in your theater? I always have to ask
Four.
this. 4? Really?
It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Myself, Steve Pulaski and Joe Viso, talking the brand new Darren Aronofsky film, Mother. I liked it a lot. I was just saying I thought it was one of the most creatively ambitious movies to be released by a mainstream studio in quite some time. Overall, Joe, what do you make of it in terms of like themes of the movie, in terms of its approach, its stylistic attributes? Because we know Aronofsky, director of Black Swan, Requiem for a Dream. He's a very stylistic filmmaker. What do you make of Mother as a whole?
I'm going to agree with you 100% on the whole creative aspect, because this was very creative, and the whole like biblical like things attached to it is what made me actually like the movie a lot more, because I see it as a modern day retelling of some of those stories in the Bible, and that's what I liked about it a lot too. Other than that, other than being very creative and everything, I mean, we'll go more into it during the review, of course. But I did enjoy it a lot too. I had a lot more fun actually after the movie piecing everything together than I did watching it. Because like I said, for that first hour, I was kind of just leaned forward, trying to be like, okay, what's this all about? What's going on and everything. But then once I let it, just sink in and during the second hour, and then after the film, just piecing everything together, I actually had a lot of fun that I kind of want to go back and watch this again to piece everything even together from start to finish.
Oh, because you absolutely could. And I mean, there's a lot of details and stuff. The symbolism felt kind of flat. Maybe on subsequent viewings, it'll look different. But I thought a lot of the imagery in the film, a lot of the pacing, and a lot of like the just gradual increase of sort of like tension. I thought that was some of the most interesting stuff in the film. Random question. You did see this before me. You saw this Thursday night, correct? Yes. How many people were in your theater? I always have to ask.
4.
This. 4? Really? There was honestly a lot in my theater. I saw it at 10:30 in the morning, Friday morning, and there were about 15 in my theater, which was surprising, which was actually surprising. Now, Mother as a whole, though, we'll get into our ratings soon, too. Don't worry about that, but I want to switch gears to talk about the box office of this film and some of the other optics and whatnot of this film, because there's a lot to kind of talk about with this movie that's external, that I think is almost as important and almost as interesting, too, just as interesting as sort of the internal aspects. The film didn't do so well, honestly, in the box office, but it was funny because Paramount 2, nobody expected it really to do. Paramount Pictures did release this film in over 3,000 theaters, which is incredible. It reminded me, too, of the movie Tusk, the Kevin Smith film.
Oh, yeah, the horror film.
Which I loved. But like the reason it reminded me of that, I know it's a weird comparison, is because that film came out in like 600 theaters. So that was a wide release. 600 theaters is a wide release. That came out in like 604 theaters. And I said in my review, too, even though I loved it, I said it probably came out in 597 more theaters than it should have. And Mother probably came out in about 2,100 more than it should have. Because the funny thing with Mother is that they went gung-ho on this movie, is that Darren Aronofsky's last movie, Noah, we talked about it last week briefly, did not do well at the box office, angered a lot of people, was controversial, biblically controversial, and then I love, too, then Aronofsky goes and makes a movie like this, which is just awesome. But notwithstanding, though, that was a big production, and that did not make the money back that they thought it was or that they had hopes that it would. Now, all of a sudden, Mother comes out, this twisted, incredibly strange, psychological thriller, stylistically potent horror movie.
Pretty dark, too.
Indeed. And this movie comes out in 3,000 theaters. This is the kind of thing that like gets released in 4 theaters, LA, 2 in LA, 2 in New York. Then next week, it gets released in like 100 theaters. Then it gets released in about 450, 500. Then they roll it out based on how much money it earns from the theaters. For this to come out in 3,000 theaters opening weekend is remarkable. Is absolutely remarkable. But over the weekend, it made about $7.5 million, which is not very good. Doesn't pose very good optics for the future outlook of this movie. It's probably going to fizzle, especially with Kingsman 2, and it's still in theaters.
I actually thought that this was going to get a limited release when I first heard about this movie coming out.
Too.
especially with how Noah did. I was like, okay, if Aronofsky is going to do something very, artistic and creative, it's probably going to get a limited release at first and then slowly just push its way to other theaters.
Especially if this doesn't take off, or especially if with the way Noah performed, anything that Aronofsky was going to do, you think would get a very low-key release. You know what I mean? So the fact that Mother came out in as many theaters as it did is just absolutely remarkable. And Paramount, I give Paramount a lot of credit. The president of marketing and distribution, a woman by the name of Megan Colligan, came out this week, and she defended the release of Paramount. Now, a lot of studios, like they knew, or at least Paramount, they knew what they were getting into. They didn't come out and say, we're disappointed. They kind of knew. I think they cut their losses when this thing was coming out. But here's what Colligan said, word for word. Here's what she said. She said, this movie, talking about Mother, is very audacious and brave. You are talking about a director at the top of his game and an actress at the top of her game. They made a movie that was intended to be bold. Everyone wants original filmmaking, and everyone celebrates Netflix when they tell a story no one else wants to tell. This is our version. We don't want all movies to be safe, and it's okay if some people don't like it. I laud Paramount. I don't think it's going to make a big difference. I don't think we're going to start seeing movies, drastically different movies from the studio that brought us monster trucks at the beginning of the year. I don't think we're going to start seeing these drastically different brave art movies. But I think that this was actually a pretty good attempt. And this is also too, and it seems kind of contradictory to what Dominic and I were talking about this past summer about movies why we were kind of halfway celebrating the failure, not financial failure, but financial underwhelming performance of Transformers: The Last Night. The good thing about movies like Transformers: The Last Night is that it gives Paramount. It gives Paramount clout. It gives Paramount a couple extra $1 million to say, okay, let's take a risk on Mother. You know what I mean? Let's put this out in 3,000 theaters, see how it does. You know what I mean? Let's see what it does. We got a little bit of extra money. We got a little bit of screw around money now. Let's see what we can do to a movie like Jennifer Lawrence's Mother that'll actually give way to a lot of, publicity because of Jennifer Lawrence, but will also maybe spawn some negative thoughts. What do you think about this?
I mean, yeah, there's always the chance that this can become a huge gem all of a sudden, just having this release, just plop it down there and then you make a bunch of money back. I mean, it didn't, unfortunately, but there's always that possibility. And like you said, they have the Transformers franchise. They have plenty of other franchises.
Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible is another one, too. And they're going to have the 6th one coming out pretty soon.
Indeed.
I mean, you just have that money that you could just be like, okay, yeah, we'll take a chance on these smaller films. And who knows? Maybe we'll make money back. Maybe we won't. But it doesn't matter when we have these big franchises.
Indeed.
It's a bold move, I think, for Paramount to release it this big. As I said, I thought this was going to be a limited release, but they decided to, put the big pants on.
They went big with it. I mean, it's really good to see something like that too, and it's probably most likely going to be a cult classic too, because I mean, Aronofsky's got a loyal following. Jennifer Lawrence has a loyal following too. But
I would say the Jennifer Lawrence loyal following of anybody who's very young is going to be very confused when watching this movie.
I mean, don't get me wrong too. The Jennifer Lawrence has got a large tween and teen following.
Yeah,
she's been taking them for a ride with movies like American Hustle, with movies like this. Like I said before, I think she's a wonderful actress.
She is.
And I think that even movies that aren't as good as her, a perfect example, if you saw it last, it's actually 2 years now, was David O. Russell's Joy, was his follow-up to American Hustle, which was about her, and she was a pitch woman for a mop, if you've seen that one.
I actually haven't.
That was a movie. It wasn't an amazingly good movie. It actually had quite a few flaws, but that was a movie. You want to talk about this movie, Mother, being mismarketed? That movie, Joy, was woefully mismarketed. Woeful. That's one of the worst marketing campaigns I've seen for a movie, in terms of they did not know how to sell that movie. They didn't, and not going beyond not knowing how to sell it, they didn't know what they had. They didn't know what they had with that movie, so they just really, really botched the marketing campaign on that film. But Aronofsky's Mother, too, you got to understand, too, that with a movie like this that's very different like this and very artsy, too, it loans itself to a lot of criticism by the masses, which is why it also earned an F CinemaScore. And I don't know if you know, or even you listeners out there know what CinemaScore is. CinemaScore is essentially a movie tracking service that comes out, and it measures, according to their website, it measures movie appeal among theater audiences. They've been around since 1978. They take polls as soon as, like, it's usually Thursday night polling at very special theaters. They'll come out, they'll hand people report cards to fill out right after the movie. Case in point for some of the recent releases, normally, and this is, here's the thing, this is not like a college student where C's get degrees. This is like an A or bust in terms of like the longevity of a movie. Your movie in terms of like reputation. If a movie gets like a B plus, that's considered okay. I mean, it really is. Just to go back and look at some of the older titles, Annabelle Creation got a B, Atomic Blonde got a B, Baby Driver got an A minus, Despicable Me got an A minus, Detroit got an A minus, The House got a B minus, Nut Job 2 Nutty by Nature got a B plus.
Okay.
Valerian in the City of 1,000 Planets got a B minus. War for the Planet of the Apes got an A minus, and It got a B plus.
Okay.
That's kind of what we're working with here.
The fact that Despicable Me 3 has a higher rating than It kind of makes me sad.
I know, and I mean, well, you know, you got to think that too. A lot of the people coming out of that showing were probably just parents that were glad their kids shut up for 2 hours too.
But
so
if like someone checks this website, like, oh, I want to know what the big hit new movie is, it's like, well, Despicable Me 3 got a higher rating than It. I guess I go see Despicable Me now.
That's why, like, aggregators like Rotten Tomatoes, I don't pay much attention to them totally because first off, Rotten Tomatoes is grossly misread by the common public.
It is.
I mean, people look at it and they think, like, again, they think back to school where they think 56% of the movie's an F. It's not good. 56% of critics liked it. So again, with these kind of aggregates of like ratings and stuff, I don't really think much of it. It's more for the people that only get out to a movie like once or twice a year, more rather than like you and I, where it's like we get out every week. You know what I mean? So we kind of know, we're plugged in.
I mostly use like Rotten Tomatoes, or if I start using CinemaScore, I use it to find a gem I don't know about. Like when John Wick got first announced and released, I thought, okay, that's going to be some generic Keanu Reeves action movie. I see on Rotten Tomatoes, it has like an 84%, and it's getting all these positive ratings.
And that catches your eye.
Yeah, and it catches my eye, and I'm like, all right, let me check this out. Next thing I know, it's like one of my favorite action movies that I saw that night.
That's cool. You know what I mean? That's really an awesome thing. You know what I mean? You don't get to see that a whole lot either. But the reason we're talking about CinemaScore, again, because I don't think I've ever mentioned it on Sleepless, because I don't put much weight to it. I really don't. But also, too, the other thing with CinemaScore, too, that I don't like about it is that it's very impulsive. The reason that, like, movies, too, on top of, I would argue, American public not really, you know, paying much attention to ad campaigns and stuff, or really, like, desire to read deeply into a movie like It Comes at Night. The reason It Comes at Night gets a D and Mother, which we're about to talk about, gets an F, a rare F. The reason that happens is because they're polling people. The second the screen says directed by Darren Aronofsky, they're passing out cards. You know what I mean? There's no time for like digestion. There's no time for contemplation. There's no time for any kind of like thought process. But Mother got a rare F on CinemaScore. I said before at the top of the hour, the only few movies to get an F score are like Alone in the Dark, Bug, The Box, the Cameron Diaz film. These are the very few, since 1978, only like 8 movies for CinemaScore have gotten an F. And as kind of a breakdown, too, is provided by Independent, the website Independent, the UK site, they say A's generally are good, B's are generally shaky or mixed, C's are terrible, and D's and F's, the movie shouldn't have been made.
Wow.
That's how the CinemaScore works, though. Because you got to think, if a movie's getting B's, that means there were some, if they've polled a massive audience, that means there's D's thrown in there. There's things that are skewing it. There might be A's, but there's D's. You're getting C's. If the average is a C, you're getting F's.
Yeah.
You're getting F's. And if the main score is an F, there were probably 1 or 2 A's at most.
And those are the Aronofsky fans.
And those are the Aronofsky fans. A is for Aronofsky in that case, you know. But it's shocking at the same time it isn't. Mainstream audiences were not going to take this movie.
No.
They weren't. And then the one thing, and I didn't mention it in my review because I thought it would have deteriorated from the film. If the film wasn't good, believe me, I would have harped on this. But if the film turned out to be very good, so in this case, I don't really need to gripe about it as much as I probably should. But I thought the marketing campaign for this movie, and it's not like the broad marketing campaign, the one trailer I saw that billed it as, it was shown before it, that said like, Darren Aronofsky presents the scariest film of all time, the film that will haunt your nightmares for years. I hate when movies do this.
Yeah.
And like Evil Dead, the remake of Evil Dead did this. Paranormal Activity 3 did this. It's always these horror films that are like, they don't really know, like Evil Dead and Mother. They don't really know how they're going to do, so they flow in with embellishing quotes.
The movie even mentioned earlier, It Comes at Night, even had a similar kind of trailer to that, where like it just kind of came off as a horror movie when it kind of really wasn't.
I loved It Comes at Night. I think It Comes at Night's one of the best films of the year. I think it was a really great, well put together film. And like people say too, they're like, I don't like horror movies. I don't think I'd like it. I don't think of it as a horror movie. I think of it as like a psychological drama.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that's kind of a flowery way to put something.
It's the same thing as like Get Out. Like I tried recommending people Get Out. I'm like, no, it's not a horror film. It's more of a thriller. You're gonna have fun while watching this.
Yeah, and they don't have none of that. You know what I mean? Like people just look at that and they're like, really? You want to talk about that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's just it's not a very good thing. It's not a very good not good optics. That's kind of just what I think about with Mother. We'll be back in a sec. Me, Sleepless with Steve. Was really looking forward to this movie. Wasn't really let down at all. Some great performances in this movie for a totally strange, totally weird movie that not a lot of people have seen. Not a lot of people have liked, really, but something that definitely deserves a lot of attention. Joe, you want to give your final thoughts on this film, break it down, and just what you liked about it truly?
Yeah, sure. All right, so to break it down, I would say performance-wise, Michelle Pfeiffer and Jennifer Lawrence to me really stood out, especially in one scene that involves talking about having children. There's a lot of times where Michelle Pfeiffer is just rude, like the rudest house guest ever. The cinematography sound, like I said, very beautifully well done. Gives this whole like house thing, making it seem bigger than it really is when you see it from the outside. And just the whole symbolism stuff, piecing it all together. It's a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to do, piecing it all back and everything. Harvey Bardem's great. Ed Harris is great. And I would just say the last 30 minutes, I mean, it's just crazy to where I was just sitting in my seat going, okay, what's going to happen next? And it would just surprise me. It kept me just interested. Just the last 30 minutes kept me just going like, okay, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? Wow, this is just really losing its mind right now. As you said, most creative thing to me, I think Aronofsky's done in a while since Black Swan, right?
Yeah, Black Swan.
Because Noah was the movie right after that, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, then I would say it's probably the most creative thing he's done since then. Then again, he's only done Noah. But other than that, I would give it as a rating. And the thing is, even though this rating is very high, I can't really recommend this movie to a lot of people.
To everybody,
yeah.
It's a tough one.
I'm gonna go with 3.5 stars as well.
You're gonna go 3.5 out of 4.
Yeah, because I gave the same thing to it, and just I had a lot of fun watching the movie too. So I'm just going to go with 3.5.
It's not a bad rating, honestly. I thought about it. I'm giving it 3 because, like I said before, I'm giving it 3 out of 4 stars because I said that I thought some of the symbolism did fall flat on the film.
It did.
I thought that some of the symbolism doesn't carry the weight that I think it should have. And I think Aronofsky at least is honest in saying that, like, this is the kind of film that if you dissect it and you really go in dissecting it too deeply, the movie's going to crumble on you, which I can totally believe.
Yes.
You know what I mean? This is not the kind of thing that's really going to loans itself to some of the meticulous explanation and film quarterly analysis that a lot of people are undoubtedly going to give it and such like that. I compared it a little bit too, as well as other critics, in terms of release and in terms of just really power and sort of like, you know, the fact that a studio backed this. I compared it to Eyes Wide Shut. And even I'll say though, like, you know, comparing these two, it's very difficult because like Eyes Wide Shut, I said before, you could make a college thesis on that movie. That movie is so dense and it's so good. But I like this one a lot. And Aronofsky, I kind of figured it out watching this movie too. I kept trying to figure out, like, is there like a universal message behind Aronofsky's movies? Like Scorsese, if you watch a lot of Martin Scorsese movies, I just watched The Departed actually for the first time this week.
For the first time?
For the first time,
Oh
indeed.
my
I'd
God.
never seen it. And I've seen most Scorsese movies. I've not seen that one. I don't know what I was waiting for. Was long overdue. It's a great film. We'll talk about it off air because there's one detail I want to bring up, but I can't say it on air. The funniest thing, though, with Scorsese, though, is Scorsese's movies usually revolve around guilt. And they usually revolve around how do you remain godly in a godless world. And these are themes that are really put in movies like Kundun, which is an underrated film that he did, Goodfellas, which is really about Catholic guilt, even different ones too. The Departed has some elements of that. Silence has a lot of elements of that.
Oh, yeah.
Of like, how do you remain godly in a godless world? And that's what I really liked about Scorsese's works. Aronofsky, on the other hand, what I think of when I think about Aronofsky, I think about obsessions, and I think about perfection, and I think about
yeah.
characters that really are obsessed about achieving something. In Black Swan, you get that idea about
ballerina.
obsession and perfection. In Noah, you get the idea of obsession about disaster and the obsession about survival. And in this one, you get the obsession about perfection and the obsession about being loved more so than loving being loved rather than loving somebody, which is what you see in Javier Bardem's character. I like this a lot. I think it was completely daring for Paramount to come out with this the way that they did. I'm proud that they did it because it's something that you don't see a lot of, and it's something that really doesn't happen a lot too with a mainstream movie. Something like this never makes it to 3,000 theaters, just never. Yeah. It'll be lucky to make it to 1,000 half the time. And I unfortunately, I don't think its theatrical optics look as good as I'd like them to be, but because of the fact that the next couple weeks you got Kingsman 2 coming out. You have it that's going to stick around till middle of October at least.
Ninjago, which kids are going to drag parents to go see.
Oh yeah, that's going to be the parent movie, and stuff like that. And then you got a lot of like lower key efforts. I know that one movie that I don't think is even going to do well at all. They've not been talking about it though, and I'm probably going to miss it this weekend. Unfortunately, is Stronger with the Jake Gyllenhaal movie, which no one's talking about. No one's talking. It's a docudrama. No one's talking about that. That was something that I thought was going to be marketed to hell like Southpaw was. That's not getting any buzz. And then you have Brad Status, which is the Ben Stiller movie, which I'd like to get out to go see as well, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to. But so there's a lot coming out though that's going to kind of detract from Mother.
Even with American Assassin coming out this weekend too, like everybody I talked to, they were like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go check out that movie." And then when I told people like, "Well, I'm going to go check out Mother," they were like, "Oh, what movie is that?"
Oh, what's that? Like what does that got to do with anything?
Is it that horror movie? And then I would tell them, "No, it's not." But here's the thing.
You can think
what? Never
that.
mind. Don't go see it.
You can think that. You know what I mean? It's very strange. It's actually kind of strange. But overall, though, I give Mother a uniformly solid 3 out of 4 stars. I think that this is a good film. I think that this is a movie that's going to live on as one of Aronofsky's more unexpected legacy films. And I think that this is a movie that does good to his confidence coming off of Noah, which I know that he doesn't respond so well to just because of the critical reception, the financial reception. He doesn't think as highly of it. So I think that he needed this kind of comeback film, and thankfully we didn't get like 2 bombs and then like a really disillusioned Aronofsky movie years later.
Apparently he wrote this movie just having like a hot flash stream one night and just wrote it with like in like a day or two.
Those are the best kind of movies, I think. Those are the best.
I mean, look what it created.
I mean, seriously, those are I think, in my opinion, some of the best movies that you can really make. You know what I mean? Or like these movies where everything just seems to kind of loan itself to being you almost feel like you're under a daze. Even when you're writing something. I've had it with even like writing short stories or writing movies and stuff, or like writing like kind of scripts and stuff like that. Where I get in a mood where I want to be done with it, but I got an idea and it's like I can't stop until I've finished it.
Exactly. And
that's something that's really awesome. And you don't get that a lot. You don't really get that a ton with a lot of movies. So I give Mother a 3 out of 4 stars. You give it 3.5 out of 4 stars. Definitely recommend this movie. But again, like you said, like if I give a movie 3 or higher stars, that means I recommend it. This is a hard movie to say, like, I'm going to recommend it to everybody. You know what I mean? If you want to feel adventurous, going with an open mind, definitely check this movie out. I mean, it is twisted. And there's some scenes, like, you can't even really talk about the infant scene and stuff like that. You really can't even speak of stuff like that. I mean, it's really twisted.
I would say, like, if you're a moviegoer like us, and you know Aronofsky's work, you will probably like this movie. If you're a mainstream moviegoer, if you really want to see this movie, do a little bit of research. Kind of like go in with kind of like maybe what some of this figure out yourself and just have fun, help you a bit. But if you want to go in blind and try figuring it out yourself and just have fun with it,
more power to you, because you can do it. You know what I mean? The more open-minded you go about the movie, I think you're going to really like it, and I think you're going to appreciate it too. And I mean, there's certain things too that, like, I don't know how you can't objectively appreciate Jennifer Lawrence in this movie. She's so good. Mm-hmm. She's so strong in this movie too. She's as dedicated as she's ever been to any role that she's ever performed ever. And that's what I really like about her, and I really have always admired about her, is that she really can carry these movie roles, and she can do a damn good job doing it. Sleepless with Steve, continuing on.